So now that we've looked at things I might want to do in order to prepare for provisioning virtual machines, let's go ahead and actually provision one. I'm going to do a single instance manually, so I want to go select Add Instance. Here I'll get some questions that I need to answer about what I'm going to do. I am going to call this one Dave Demo. That way, because I have a shared environment, anyone else who sees it will know who owns that instance and what they're using it for. I can select my site. Since my demo account here only has access to one data center, I don't have disaster recovery set up for virtual machines I can create. I'm only offered the data center I'm in. If you're using our disaster recovery services, you'll see both data centers that you're in, and from this one interface, you can create virtual machine instances at either of the sites you have access to. I'm going to look at my service offering here. If I choose DMZ service, that means the virtual machine will have access to the public-facing internet. I don't want that, so I'm going to choose my basic enterprise service, which is not facing the internet in any way. And core would be if I were using that disaster recovery service and wanted to ensure that the data for my VM were being replicated to that secondary data center. Again, since I don't have that service set up, I'm going to just go with the basic. I want to select my business group. I created that demo in business group earlier, so I'm going to add it to this now. Because of the service I've selected, it has already pre-selected for me my compute profile and compute allocation. So now what's left for me to do is to choose my OS. Let's go with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And rather than use an OVA, I'm just going to install the image directly here. So I'm going to select which image I want to use. Now what you may have just noticed is that when I selected the image I wanted to use, xStream has gone ahead and let me know that I'm going to need at least a 40 gig disk to go with that, and that I'll want one network interface. Now, simply having selected the disk for me and created that isn't enough. You'll notice the storage profile is missing here. So I'm going to want to edit this disk profile first here and select that profile. I could do my tier 1 block storage if I wanted something high performance, and my tier 2 if I didn't need the higher storage performance. So let's say that we're going to be running some sort of application on here where I need that lower, shorter response time from my storage. So I'm going to go with tier 1 here. And maybe instead of 40, I actually want 45 gig. I still have time to change things here, and I can do different things. So I'm going to just save my storage profile. And now I'm going to come back over to OS and Compute, and I'm going to select the hardware template I want to use. Now, there's a whole bunch of hardware templates already set up for you, so you can see them, the whole list here. In fact, I could go all the way up to 72 virtual CPUs and 2 terabytes of RAM. I'm thinking I probably don't need quite that much just for demo purposes. So I'm going to go with something small. I'm going to choose 1 virtual CPU and 2 gig of RAM. Let's look at some of the other options here. Boot to BIOS. I can select if I want the ability when someone's on the console, when my OS is rebooting, you have the option of going into the BIOS, which is connected to that hardware template. I'm not going to select that. I want to make things a little more secure. I don't even want my own admins to have the ability to change some of those options. So I'm going to choose not to select it. You may choose to select it. It's going to depend on your usage. One of the features I really like that I want to make sure is enabled here is I want to enable CPU hot add. This is a feature that will allow additional CPU to be added to this virtual machine instance without requiring that the virtual machine be shut down or that the OS even be shut down. You'll see here that we'll warn you about this. We'll remind you not all operating systems support this functionality, so you'll want to be sure that yours does before you enable this feature. I know for a fact that mine does, so I'm going to go ahead with it. And here I have what is essentially the opposite of that, the ability to reduce the number of CPUs that I have working for my virtual machine instance, again without requiring me to shut down the virtual machine or the OS. So I'm going to select that. Again, this will only be supported with OSs that support that functionality. And lastly, I'm going to also enable memory hot add. This is very similar, except for memory rather than CPU. And again, the same caveat, only supported for operating systems that support that functionality. For operating systems that do support these functionalities, these are awesome options because it allows me to adjust the resources that virtual machine has access to, whether or not it's up and running, no interruption to my end users. Lastly, I'm going to add this virtual machine to the resource group I created earlier, the demo group. I'm going to come back. I'm going to choose not to enable OS customization here, just for in the interest of not making this demo any longer than it needs to be. But you have the option here of enabling customizations, and you can in fact have stored templates for certain customizations that you know that you want in your environment. So when I'm satisfied with all my choices here, I'm going to go and click on Save Instance. And now I see that there are some things going on in my environment. So what I want to do is take a look at what's going on. The first action I'll see here is this RID save tenant. Now, RID is actually an acronym that stands for Reserve ID. So the first thing it did in creating this virtual machine instance was to reserve a unique ID for this instance to ensure that that was available in the environment. And that ID will now be assigned to this virtual machine instance. And then next is the set VM action. So that's where it's now setting all those parameters that we defined earlier. So we just need to wait for this to complete. So in order to save you again from this demo being any longer than it absolutely needs to, I've skipped ahead in time to where things are complete. Let me reduce that, and now I can sort based on the names. You'll see right here, there we go. Here's the virtual machine instance I created, and it is powered on. And if I go look at it in more detail, I'll see that it's powered on, the OS is running, and all the other info I had for it is set. It's currently using 42.18 gigabytes of storage, and at the moment, since I'm not putting any workload on it at the moment, my CPU usage and my memory usage is at 0. So that's how to create a single virtual machine instance.